Good morning and welcome to Rising. Thanks for starting your week off with us, with myself, and with Lindsay. Nice to see you.
Good morning. I meant to tell you I saw all those invasive species all day.
The lanternflies.
Yes, and I can't.
They're really bad.
They were like in the doorway of my apartment building.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, I'm over
They were
it.
in my apartment.
And I don't want to drag everybody else through who's not experiencing this. It's not in D.C. that's watching us, but it's a big problem.
It is unpleasant.
Well, coming up on Rising, I'll be discussing the tragic incident where ICE officials shot and killed a Chicago man after he allegedly resisted arrest.
Plus, Pete Buttigieg is backing Kamala Harris by saying that former President Biden should have never run for re-election in the first place.
And Fox News host Brian Kilmeade is apologizing after a questionable comment that he made on the network. But first, of course, Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, let's get to it. Just days after the shocking murder of conservative media personality Charlie Kirk, we are learning new details about his alleged killer, 22-year-old Utah man Tyler Robinson. Now, while there's some still contradictory information concerning his motivations and thus every reason to be cautious and to wait for further confirmation, authorities are claiming that Robinson was indeed motivated by what appear to be left-leaning grievances. Specifically, he disliked Kirk for spreading hate, and additionally, Robinson's roommate, who's cooperating with the authorities, was his boyfriend. Now, that roommate is a transgender individual and is in the process of transitioning from male to female. This information was confirmed by Utah Governor Spencer Cox, who, in my opinion, has distinguished himself for his calm, collected, cool-headed approach to dealing with this horrific tragedy. Now, here's what Cox said about Robinson in an interview with ABC.
Yesterday that we can confirm that his roommate was indeed a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female. That's information that the FBI had mentioned yesterday. We can confirm that as well, and that he is cooperating with authorities as well.
Again, I want to emphasize cautiousness because we definitely don't have all the facts yet. Let me say that as plainly as possible. Jumping to conclusions helps no one, because just because something is alleged by a friend or family member or a neighbor of the perpetrator, or even by the police, it doesn't mean it's necessarily true. For instance, The Guardian reported on Friday that a high school friend of Robinson's had confirmed his left-wing views. Then, unfortunately, The Guardian had to retract the quotes from that entire story after the friend contradicted himself. The easiest way not to end up looking like a fool is to take a deep breath and wait for more information. Haste helps no one. But all that throat clearing aside, a picture of the shooter is emerging. The transgender roommate / partner, the weird and edgy online memes inscribed into the shell casings of the gun, the bullet that was fired by the gun, the contention that Kirk was spreading hate, the postings of both Robinson and his roommate on social media, all these facts are beginning to suggest a very online leftist ideology. Now, while this does not mean that people who self-identify as being on the left are responsible, it does mean that attempts by progressives to paint the shooter as maybe or perhaps a MAGA person who is even more to the right than Charlie Kirk, well, those are not panning out very much. Now, one such progressive was Harvard professor Lawrence Tribe, who wrote on X, "Kirk's assassin appears to have been ultra-MAGA." He later took that post down. Wajahat Ali, a left-wing writer and columnist, wrote on X, "Tyler Robinson, Kirk's alleged shooter, is a white man from a Trump-supporting conservative family that loved guns. He used all the language and references that groypers use. MAGA will spin and turn and pivot and lie and distract. Their base will believe it, but they aren't the majority." And then he doubled down in an interview he gave for his Substack. Let's watch.
Has been identified, allegedly, the alleged shooter is Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, white, straight, male, Christian, with a conservative background, Second Amendment supporter, experienced firearms user, good son, outside of murder was law-abiding. His household, Republican household, MAGA household, Blue Lives Matter household, Second Amendment right household, taught to shoot since a young age, father and ex-sheriff, convinced Tyler to turn himself in.
Well, in case you don't know, the Groypers are an online far-right subculture that dislikes Charlie Kirk and other more mainstream conservatives for being insufficiently anti-Semitic. If Robinson was a Groyper, this would somewhat change the media narrative, of course, although, as I've pointed out, it's theoretically possible he could have been both far-right and far-left at different times, even at the same time. People don't have to have some neatly sorted-out political ideology, and extremists with mental health problems, they're even less consistent. However, there just isn't really much evidence at this point that he's a groyper. And the insistence coming from progressives that, yeah, he was MAGA, that looks like wishful thinking from people who don't want their own political tribes to bear responsibility for what happened. Now let's take our time, figure out what did happen, and then punish the person or persons who are to blame. But we are getting, Lindsay, a clearer picture of the shooter, and it does seem to be what we assumed from the beginning, that he disliked Charlie Kirk's harmful, in his view, hateful views, quite possibly about transgender people. That's the issue Charlie Kirk was addressing when the shot was fired, and he was in a relationship with a transgender person. They expressed left-wing views online. That roommate is cooperating fully with law enforcement, which is great. There's been no indication whatsoever that the roommate had any knowledge of, forewarning of, involvement of this horrific crime. And is cooperating, and that's great. The alleged shooter is not cooperating, has not confessed to law enforcement, so we will still have to spend some time gathering information, but that's where we are.
The finger pointing to me is the issue. I mean, when we talk about what the conversation largely has been, let's say even after the recent unfortunate shootings, has been a conversation on the Republican side of the aisle saying maybe transgender people should be considered as people who shouldn't have access to guns, right? Because they're assuming it's a mental health issue. So when you're conflating everything that we've been talking about recently and then naming that his partner was transgender, I still don't see how his partner being transgender connects the transgender person to the incident, right? The person that actually killed Charlie Kirk was a man who grew up in a Republican-leaning Utah with a Republican registered parents.
Well, right,
and
but he's not Republican.
No, but he's not Republican, but he also is an unaffiliated voter. And so he doesn't have any registration alignment on his last voting record that anybody can find, including the New York Times. And so trying to figure out who he more aligns with, to me, is a foolish task, when the task really should be how to get a criminal the maximum punishment that they deserve for killing someone. And I see the discourse online, but I don't see how this contributes to the conversation, because both of us have friends on both sides of the aisle, and both of them have seen these friends condemn this. And so when I look at online, we're bolstering the narrative of negativity and that people were actually saying that somebody on either side of the aisle should condone this. But what I understand in real life to be happening is that nobody wants to see somebody get executed in this way. And so that's why I don't understand why the top leaders that are supposed to be quelling the noise right now are trying to point fingers rather than coming up with realistic conversations
we'll
around
talk
this.
more about the reactions in the next segment, but I think the reason why it's important to assert, it's not like, oh, we may never know what his political views are. It's now becoming quite likely his views are left-leaning. Charlie Kirk is a well-known, famous right-wing person with conservative views, including on gender and social issues, and we now have reason to believe that's what would have motivated the shooter. And that's important, especially when left-wing people or progressive people like Wajahat Ali and others are saying, oh no, well, he said, he came from a Christian family, a white family, he's straight, he's not even straight.
The only pushback that I would say is, I was looking through all the times, because I wanted to make sure, because I know and can acknowledge that a lot of dialogue is used around President Trump and other Republican leaders by Democrats, the word fascist, the Gestapo, all these conversations that we're having. So I looked up how many times Republicans are doing it, and it's pretty equal. Like, we look at Ben Shapiro, he's called the Democrats fascist. We look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's tweeted fascist. I mean, don't quote me, go check. We look at President Trump on the campaign trail, he's called the Democrats fascist. So when I see fascist writing on a bullet, I don't attribute that bullet to any of those people I just named, or any Republican for that matter. I attribute it to the criminal. And so I think when we start trying to figure out who is most aligned with the views of a killer, we are completely missing the point on actually having dialogue that will help the country get to a better place than we are now, which is very divisive.
All right, well, we'll discuss that more in our next segment. Coming up, conservatives are orchestrating a mass firing campaign against social media users who celebrated Charlie Kirk's death. Is that appropriate? We'll debate. Stay with us.